How's everybody doing? I hope well. It is time for some more reworked episodes. Back to the reworked season, I guess you can say. I know it's been a little bit of a delay. Last reworked you saw was probably somewhere in July or August of last year, but it's back to it. 2019 is upon us. Hope everybody's doing well. And we're about to start hashing out some of these most exciting days of the Pinhoti project. We're going to look at, for those that don't know, the reworked season is going to be a more detailed look, an explanation on some of the decisions we made, some of the calling styles we may have used, the reason we called the way we did, some setup scenarios that we went through, or the reason we set up how we did. Just kind of an overview of why we did what we did. Seems like a lot of people have those type of questions. Thought that, maybe a reworked episode where we go back into those days, kind of watch through some of the featured episodes, we're going to call them, and kind of just explain what we're doing. For those that don't know, Pinhoti Project, if you just wandered into this episode, it is 75 days worth of spring turkey hunting. So if you haven't found it, haven't looked at it, this is the first time you've ever heard of the Pinhoti Project, hop over to the channel, check out the season. It's a whole lot of turkey hunting you have to look forward to. As far as the reworks, we're gonna, at the moment, my plan is to kind of block several days at a time. We'll hit the high spots of, some of those days, and then we'll feature an episode like I just mentioned, and we will kind of get into the meat of the episode. Those episodes that have a little bit more meat to chew on, we'll feature those episodes, get into the setups, the calling, and all the stuff that I just mentioned. So anyways, let's jump right into it so this thing doesn't last an hour here. I think we ended up with day 8 back at the beginning of this thing, so we're going to pick up with day 9, which is Alabama's opening day, where Chubbs and I are grinding it out for the early season. Their early season in Alabama can be very challenging. Turkeys are flocked up. It's very early, very cold. Turkeys can gobble quite a bit that time of year, but a lot of times it may just be a handful of gobbling before they fly down. They don't seem to react to calls really well because, like I said, a lot of times they're flocked up. They have hens. So anyways, that's what we're dealing with. We're dancing around the flock, we like to call it, and we're doing what Chubbs called armed scouting. Essentially, we're going into places, listening for turkeys, dropping pins, getting their locations. Most of the time, they're not ready to die. They're not in the right mood. So we'll dance around them a little bit until we can confirm that for sure, and then we back out and plan on coming back at a later day when hopefully some less hens, better weather, things warm up, and all around things may just be better for killing them. That's kind of what we do early season. It's what we did on the opening day, which was day 9 of Alabama season, and came really close to killing that turkey. Chubbs had gone in and done a couple days worth of listening while I was still down in Florida. We moved right in and almost got between that gobbler and his hens. Literally, he was probably within shotgun range. It just didn't work out. But he gobbled a handful of times, moved right off with his hens, and that was it. Day 10, the big thing to take away from that day is don't go cheap on your trash bags when it comes to crossing the creeks. When you got to cross creeks and you like using hiking boots like we do, it's imperative that you pack contractor bags, good heavy-duty contractor bags. You guys watched Chubbs have an epic fail at the cheap bag. So we lost Dollar General as a sponsor there on that episode, but so be it. They didn't pay much anyways. Day 11 is one of those days where we had to play the wind. I know you probably heard us talk about that quite a bit. We saw a lot of rough weather here at the beginning, trying to get on those downwind side of the mountains and try to use that almost as a shield. The turkeys like the downwind sides, and you can hear better when you're downwind on the side. So anyways, I got a plane flying over really close, so I hope that doesn't interfere with the audio. But anyways, going forward, we did bump some turkeys on day 11. Another thing to take away from that is don't always give up. We didn't have any success with it that day, but don't give up if you bump turkeys, especially a gobbler like it was that morning. I think if I'm thinking about the right day, maybe I'm not. I can't remember. I'm kind of getting lost already. It was 75 days worth. But anyways, we'll move on to day 12. which was the featured day here. That's what I've got kind of pulled up here on the on YouTube. I'm going to just click right on it on YouTube, like you guys can access there, and we'll get to talking about that. I've already got this thing recording. We'll hop to full screen here, and let's look. Hopefully the glare is not too bad. I know this may be a little bit of a awkward way of doing this, but I think it does best because I can correspond with you while I'm watching it too. So a couple things. We're hunting the national forest. The turkeys are still flocked up, big flock of turkeys, and we're dancing around the outside of that circle. The turkeys are in this circle. They're flocked up, and you can't get close to them because the woods are still so dead. I mean, there's no leaves. We're trying to use the terrain the best we can to close the distance, but even getting as close as you possibly can, you're way outside that bubble that you need to be in to really, a lot of times, get turkeys to respond. You hear Chubbs and I do a lot of like we're both calling, we're dueling it out. You hear the morning start somewhat slow, and I think the morning would have probably played out really slow had we not pushed in, got as close as possible, and started cutting at these turkeys. When a hen would yelp, we'd climb on top of her. When the gobblers would gobble, we'd do the same thing. We're trying to raise that excitement level and see if we can't provoke those guys to kind of, bring the excitement level up of the whole flock. They kind of feed off each other, and if you can bring that excitement level up, sometimes you can provoke them to come to the call a little more. And also, which is what happened, we were able to pull a turkey that was right on the fringe of that circle. You've heard us mention it many times before. Well, a lot of times we like to target that bird that's higher because he's either been pushed away from the flock, or for some reason he wasn't getting any attention from the flock, so he climbed higher maybe to attract some hens that were in the distance that weren't part of the flock. So either way, when we got in closer, we found a gobbler that was just on the fringe of the flock, a little bit higher than everybody else. Let's go dive into here and see if I can't find some of this exact details that I'm talking about here. Let's jump over to 508, which is about right here. And this is going to be a part where you hear Chubbs jump on a turkey. This is where it all begins. We thought we heard a turkey, or there was a turkey gobbled one time really high, and as we're moving in on the flock of turkeys, this turkey, I hear a turkey fly down, and we get to the ground and set up for a minute. That turkey didn't gobble again. Not for that moment anyways. He gobbled later in the day, but we kind of slowed down there for a minute. But as we're there, that's when the flock of turkeys responded a little bit, and that's when Chubbs jumps on the hen turkey. You'll hear it here. Or I think it was the hen he jumped on here. Let's see what it was.
That was another.
You heard that hen, and he jumped right on top of her. He's trying to, basically aggravate her, get aggressive with her, see if he can bring that excitement level up and just start this whole process of trying to get all of those turkeys in an elevated sense of excitement to see if we can't get them in a mood to where we can manipulate them to come to us. It all starts there. And then about right here, let's skip across to about here. We're moving in on these turkeys. Once the turkeys start gobbling a little bit, the flock starts gobbling, we notice that we can cut some more ground. And of course, you see us get up, and that's what we're doing. And we're calling as we're going to them. This is when I start helping Chubbs. We get in to where we're both calling. There's a lot of turkeys, so we're trying to sound like two turkeys and just basically laying it all on the line. We're cutting at them. We're yelping at them. Really just being loud and obnoxious because we're trying to get that flock in the same mood and trying to get them to be loud and obnoxious too, because if we can get that excitement level built up, we can maybe make something happen. We're making that move here. Find a good double tree. Cover's always a good idea as well. And another thing about cover, you'll notice just shy of this, and Chubbs mentions it after we kill the turkey too, we gear down at one point, but we're looking at the roll of a hill. And we're using that roll of a hill to cut distance. But also where we started to set up, the roll of that hill was tight. Perfect scenario. Here we go. when a turkey crests a hill, he's in shotgun range. But he's not 10 yards in shotgun range. Because if you think about it, if a turkey crests a hill and it's really hard, even in dry leaves, you can hear them, but the loud, by the time they get that close, the sound is almost deafening, and it can be really hard to pinpoint that he's coming up exactly right there. And if he's 10 yards away, it's a lot easier for him to pick you off and get gone before you have an opportunity to kill him. And if your gun only has to be off an inch for you to have to move, enough for him to be able to see you and get out of dodge quicker. Best case scenario is when that rollover is about 40 yards, so that once he crests that rollover, you have to move your gun less in order to make up what may be, a foot of difference left or right to be able to get exactly on the turkey. So when we first gear down, we're too tight. The rollover is too close. We have to climb a little more elevation and back off of that crest of the ridge a little bit so that rollover is more or less in the 40-yard range, so that when he does roll over, we have a little wiggle room there to get on the turkey and kill him before he sees us in these open woods. Not to mention we found a big, nice double tree. And especially when you're dealing with two people, when you got a cameraman and a shooter, you want as much cover as you can possibly get. So we'll go forward. That was Chubbs that farted, by the way. It's always Chubbs that farts. Always. Don't ever mistake that. See, let's skip forward to, let's hop across to about right here. I've got some notes made here, so bear with me. Let's see. Trying to bringing up that excitement like I keep mentioning. And, oh yeah, here's something for y'all to look at. I picked out. Check Chubbs out right here. Just trying to gauge basically trying to gauge where they're going, using sound in order to figure out if they're drifting away, if they're getting closer. What you're basically hearing is some turkeys on the back side of the ridge that are gobbling. It only takes turkeys as soon as they roll over, and if they're casting their calls the other way, it can seem like they are a football field further than they actually are. And what you're hearing is turkeys that have rolled over the ridge. That flock has started flying down, so turkeys are falling off into bottoms. They're falling over the roll in the ridge. So you really got to learn. Distance is really hard to gauge. It all comes with experience like everything else, but you've got to learn when you hear a gobble, did it echo? If it echoed, it's probably in a bottom. Did you hear it sound very, very distant, almost muffled, almost like there's a mountain between you, like he rolled around the ridge? Or if he's coming at you loud and clear, like this upper turkey was, the highest turkey, and it was nothing between you but air, like you heard it nice and crisp, and every little chuckle of that gobble was crisp, obviously that means that there's nothing between you but air, and he's either on the ridge that's facing you or he's still in the tree. In this situation, he was still in the tree. What I was wanting to get at too, what I was trying to get at too when I just skipped forward here, is right here. This situation is why turkey hunters do not wear white socks or light colored socks. See Chubb's pants legs drawing up here? Obviously you want to wear long pants, but it's not always possible when you're sitting down sliding around. Wear dark socks, because if Chubbs was wearing white socks or pink socks or whatever, if anybody wears pink socks, they would be shining right now. So wear black socks. Turkey hunters don't buy white socks. Anyways, moving forward, we will hop across to about 12 minutes and 38 seconds, which I think is going to hear more of us trying to bring that excitement level of the flock up here. We may have just listened to it, actually. Basically, every time those turkeys gobble, we're trying to just blow them away with cutting to try to get that excitement level up. Let's try to get them fired up so we can manipulate that flock and see if we can cause them to do something a little bit crazy. And like I said, we're dealing with a turkey that's a little bit higher. So a lot of times, this is what I've seen with turkeys when you've got an outlier. You've got a turkey that's got an outlier that's going to fly down and go to the flock. A lot of times, it doesn't mean that turkey's more or less a small turkey or an outcast turkey. A lot of times, especially like when we're in this situation here, there's a group of gobblers in this flock. It only takes, say, three 2-year-old turkeys or 4 2-year-old turkeys to take a big old turkey and run him off. So just because you're calling to a satellite gobbler, you shouldn't care. I could care less if it's a 2-year-old with an 8-inch beard, but just because it's a satellite gobbler doesn't mean it's a small gobbler or a young gobbler or anything of that nature. You could very well be dealing with a gobbler that's getting pushed around by a flock of 2-year-old gobblers, or you've seen gobblers get pushed around by a flock of jakes. You know, powers in numbers when it comes to birds a lot of times. So we're calling to that higher bird and making a lot of racket, trying to manipulate that flock of gobblers, but we're also essentially, if he goes into that flock and starts getting pushed around to that flock, I have found that if he's already got another destination in mind, that's the way he'll run when those gobblers start chasing him. So you're trying to, almost put that seed in his head before he gets on the ground where, hey, if it comes time to flee, this is a safe way to go because there's already turkeys over here. And a lot of times he may not even want to deal with the flock. He may already know what's going to happen when he gets there, and a lot of times he'll just veer your way anyways. So moving forward, let's see, and this is where things start to get a little bit interesting here. Start about right here, see what happens.
Okay. That's why he sounded so clear. He was still in the tree.
He just flew down. That's why I had that marked. The turkey was still in the tree. This doggone thing is cut off on me. There we go. Still in the tree, so that's what we're dealing with, and we're dealing with 17 minutes, so we're doing okay. And then you hear this nasty booger. And you hear her start manipulating the sound a little bit in the calling. We're trying to sound like multiple turkeys. I'll, call a little bit high pitch, and then we'll do some low pitch stuff, and you hear some jakes start yelping. Like I said, we're dealing with a flock of turkeys, and we're just trying to mimic as many turkeys as possible. Just sound like a flock, see if we can manipulate everything. And the turkey flew down out of the tree, and it was that satellite bird that was a little bit north of us or higher than the other birds. And I think, and what we have concluded, was that turkey was on the opposite ridge, but he pitched into our side of the ridge. And the next thing we hear is walking in the leaves. And as soon as we pick up on the walking in the leaves, obviously things get pretty doggone serious, and we start prepping because we're pretty sure we know who it is. We'll go ahead and skip forward to that. That was at about 15-minute mark. Let's look at that. He gobbles just right out of sight, and things get really interesting. Another thing we'll mention here real quick is the whole time that we have been calling to these turkeys, and especially when we get them like this one gets a little closer, we're throwing our calls downhill. Turkeys have a tendency to gobblers always like the high ground. When they approach you, they'll come to the high side a lot of times, and you got to keep that in mind. In this situation, the way that tapered off, and when he gobbled, we assumed he was wrapping around the side of the hill. That's what it sounded like, and we were throwing our calls down to that right side because it was more accommodating for us. Our field of view was a lot better, and that rollover in the hill that we just talked about was further downhill than it was if he went uphill. So we had this laid over log as well that was causing us a few problems, because when you have a laid over log, it gives you more of a crisp rollover that he can pop over and see you before you have time to do anything, rather than that more of a gradual slope when you have the right setup. So anyways, we'll continue on. And there's nothing like the sound of a gobbler drumming and his footsteps in dry leaves. It fills your ears, and it's hard to pinpoint the exact spot he's going to pop up. That's why it's important to have that perfect setup that gives you a little bit of wiggle room, because you see a swing on this turkey. What happens there is we make the turkey, and he goes behind one of these big pines, and when he does, you see us both make the move that we need to basically get to where we need to be. He was using the gun, I was using the camera to get into this hole that this turkey was going to walk through. And it's very important. As you can see, it's kind of trashy as he went downhill. Here Chubbs and I both just hammering him with the calls, just trying to get him to pause so that he can do the killing while he's in the open. And that's all she wrote. You hear us do a lot of calling after the shot. We had a flock of turkeys around us. You've heard turkeys probably, react to thunder and any other loud noise. We're just trying to cover up the gunshot, try to keep everything. We want to get in and out of a place without anything ever knowing we were there. So we try to do that to kind of cover up the commotion that we made. So that's why we do that. But anyways, I don't have anything else about the hunt to really discuss. So hopefully this is something that somebody found helpful. If you guys can think of anything else that you'd like to explain about the hunt, just drop a comment below. Be glad to discuss it. Just a recap here. I can hammer back through the notes real quick. We're hunting National Forest turkeys, so we can't get really close because the terrain won't allow it. There's no leaves on the trees. Everything's dead. Get as close as we can, dancing around that circle. We're shooting for that bird that we heard that was a little bit higher than the flock. We're being obnoxious with the calling. We're calling a lot. We're calling loud. We're climbing on every turkey that makes a sound. We're climbing on top of it. The hens that are yelping, we're yelping and cutting back at them. We're trying to raise that excitement level. Every time the turkeys gobble, we try to climb on top of it. We're sounding like multiple turkeys, just trying to be a flock of turkeys right there, trying to get inside the flock, trying to manipulate the flock to come to us, trying to just obviously do what we did, manipulate one gobbler to come to us is all we're really wanting. Don't wear white socks, and always just try to practice and pay attention to the distance of those turkeys when you're gobbling. A turkey that's in a bottom can be closer than he appears, and a turkey that may be nothing between you but air, but that he may be on a mountaintop that may be twice as far as you think he is, but there's nothing between you but air, so he's going to hear it sound a lot closer. So that's something that will come with experience. And overall early season hunting is just armed scouting and dropping those pins, finding those turkeys, and coming back when the time is right to kill them. Anyways, if you like these reworked, if you like this particular reworked, if you could give the video thumbs up, I figured out that helps quite a bit. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. I've got a lot more to go for these reworks. Don't worry, we are going to hit those days that you guys are asking for, so they're coming. Little by little, we'll knock them all out, and I've even planned on, I think it would be very helpful if we made a stroll back through the woods. It's time to be scouting anyways, and we can relive a couple of those hunts that did or didn't shape up last year and kind of walk you through exactly why we sat where we sat and made the moves that we made and things like that. So anyways, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and stay tuned. We got more to come. And check out that product placement. That's pretty cool, isn't it? See you guys.